When I stepped off the transport plane after 9 agonizing months overseas, all I wanted was to collapse into my husband's arms and finally enjoy the home we'd bought right before I left. But 3 days after coming back, my phone rang. It was the woman who had sold us the house. Her voice was barely a whisper, trembling with urgency. "Don't tell your husband. Come alone," she said. She told me she had left a hidden security camera in the master bedroom, forgotten during the rush of moving out. And what she saw recorded on that feed while I was deployed would change my life forever. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The moment I hung up that phone, my blood ran cold, and the life I thought I was returning to completely shattered. My name is Danielle Caldwell, and at 31 years old, I thought I'd already seen the worst the world had to offer. I'd spent 9 brutal months deployed overseas, counting down every single hour until I could finally return to normal life. All I wanted was to come back to the quiet suburban house my husband, Mark, and I had purchased right before I shipped out. When my transport plane touched down, seeing Mark waiting for me felt like a dream. But once the initial excitement wore off, I couldn't shake a subtle, uneasy feeling. Mark seemed distracted. He was jumpy, checking his phone constantly, and whenever I asked simple questions about the house or how he'd spent his time while I was gone, his answers were strangely vague. I brushed it off as post-deployment adjustment until 3 days after my return. Mark had just stepped out to run an errand when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a local, unlisted number. When I answered, a trembling female voice asked for me directly. It was Evelyn, the elderly woman who had sold us the house. "Danielle," she whispered, her voice tight with panic. "Don't tell your husband. Come alone." She told me she had left a hidden security camera in the house, forgotten during her rush to move out. She insisted I meet her privately at a nearby diner immediately, warning me that what she'd seen on that feed while I was away changed everything. My heart hammered against my ribs as I grabbed my keys, completely unaware of the nightmare I was about to walk into. I drove through town with a cold sweat dripping down my back, my mind racing through every terrifying possibility. Had Mark been bringing another woman into our home? Was he living a double life while I was thousands of miles away risking mine? The thought of infidelity made my chest tighten, but deep down, a quiet military instinct told me something even darker was at play. The diner sat on the edge of town, its faded neon sign flickering against the gray afternoon sky. I found Evelyn tucked away in a corner booth, wringing her hands around a cup of black coffee that had long gone cold. She was a frail woman in her late 60s, but the look in her eyes wasn't just sadness, it was sheer, unadulterated terror. As soon as I sat down, she leaned across the table. "Danielle, I am so sorry to drag you into this," she began, her voice trembling. She explained that before selling the house, she had installed a discreet, motion-activated camera inside a smoke detector in the master bedroom to keep an eye on contractors. In the chaos of her husband's sudden passing and moving out, she had completely forgotten to dismantle the cloud account linked to her phone. "I didn't mean to spy," Evelyn whispered, sliding a plain black flash drive across the Formica tabletop. A notification popped up on my phone 2 months ago. I thought it was a glitch. But when I opened the live feed, "Danielle, what your husband has been doing in that house has nothing to do with another woman." She pushed the drive closer to my trembling fingers. "Take this. Watch it where he can't see you. But whatever you do, do not let Mark know you have it. He is not the man you think he is." I drove home with the tiny black flash drive heavy in my pocket, feeling like I was carrying live ordnance. When I walked back through our front door, Mark was in the kitchen, casually making a sandwich. He looked up, gave me that warm, familiar smile, and asked where I'd gone. I forced a laugh, lied about taking a quick walk to stretch my legs, and somehow managed to keep my composure throughout the entire evening. I waited until midnight, Mark was fast asleep, his steady breathing filling the quiet room. Slipping out of bed, I grabbed my laptop and locked myself in the downstairs bathroom. My hands shook as I inserted the flash drive and pulled up the video files. I had braced myself to see evidence of an affair. Another woman in our bed. Betrayal in the most intimate sense. But as the first clip began to play, my confusion quickly replaced my heartbreak. The video showed Mark, but he wasn't alone. It was 3 weeks into my deployment. Standing in our bedroom with him were 2 men dressed in dark work clothes, carrying heavy duffel bags filled with tools. They weren't relaxing or socializing. They were systematically tapping on the walls with acoustic sensors, pulling up floorboards, and using thermal cameras aimed at the structural pillars. In clip after clip recorded over several months, Mark directed these men like a military commander. They weren't cheating on me. They were searching for something hidden within the very bones of our house. Mark was using my deployment as cover to pull off a cold, calculated operation right beneath my nose, turning our dream home into a crime scene while I was thousands of miles away protecting our country. The next morning, I waited for Mark to leave for work before meeting Evelyn at a quiet park away from town. Staring at her across a wooden bench, I laid out what I'd seen on the footage. "Evelyn," I said, my voice cutting through the crisp air. "He wasn't cheating. He's tearing the house apart from the inside. What was your husband hiding in those walls?" Evelyn closed her eyes, tears welling up. She explained that her late husband, Arthur, had been a successful commercial developer who deeply distrusted banks. Before he passed away suddenly, he had hidden a fortune, millions in bearer bonds, gold bullion, and untraceable real estate deeds, somewhere within the home's reinforced concrete foundation. The pieces instantly clicked together, and a sickening feeling washed over me. Mark hadn't chosen our house by accident. He had discovered Arthur's secret before we even put in an offer. He had deliberately pushed us to buy this specific property, knowing my upcoming deployment would give him 9 uninterrupted months to tear down walls and locate the hidden fortune. He had married a soldier, waited for me to be sent into a war zone, and used my service as a smokescreen to pull off a multi-million-dollar heist, planning to pocket the wealth and cut both Evelyn and me out entirely. But Mark had made one fatal mistake. He assumed I would return home completely blind to his game. In the military, when an enemy exposes their position, you don't charge blindly. You set an ambush. Mark thought he was playing a master stroke, but he didn't realize he was dealing with a logistics officer trained to analyze tactical threats. I wasn't going to let anger cloud my judgment. I was going to use his own greed to destroy him. Instead of confronting him, I acted like the dutiful, oblivious wife. Every morning I kissed him goodbye, and every evening I sat across from him at the dinner table, smiling while my mind mapped out his downfall. But behind his back, I was working around the clock. First, I met with a trusted attorney and brought Evelyn with me. We established that the hidden assets legally belonged to Arthur's estate, proving Mark's search was an act of grand larceny and fraud. Next, I discreetly installed my own high-definition hidden cameras throughout the house, monitoring his movements right from my phone. Watching the live feeds was surreal. I saw him tracking blueprints, measuring the basement pillars, and using a jackhammer wrapped in heavy blankets to muffle the sound while I was out. He was getting close, focusing his efforts on a reinforced false wall behind the furnace in the basement. My attorney notified the local authorities and financial fraud investigators, laying out the video evidence Evelyn and I had gathered. We needed to catch him in the act of physically breaking into the vault to ensure the charges would stick beyond a shadow of a doubt. I fed Mark false information, telling him I'd be away for the weekend visiting my parents. The trap was set, the bait was taken, and all that was left was to pull the net tight. The rainy Saturday night arrived. I parked 2 blocks away from the house, watching the live camera feed on my phone inside a dark, unmarked police cruiser. Detective Vance sat beside me, his eyes glued to the screen. Mark believed I was hundreds of miles away. On the monitor, we watched him walk into the basement carrying a heavy drill, a sledgehammer, and a powerful angle grinder. He wore heavy gloves and a look of pure, unadulterated greed. He walked straight to the hidden space behind the furnace, dragged away the false insulation, and began attacking the reinforced wall with frantic intensity. With a deafening crack of concrete, the wall gave way. Mark reached into the exposed cavity, his hands trembling as he pulled out a heavy, dust-covered steel lockbox. He threw back his head and laughed out loud, holding the box to his chest like a trophy. He thought he had won. He thought he was home free. That was when Detective Vance signaled his team. The heavy steel front door was breached with a sudden, thunderous bang. Boots heavy on the floorboards echoed down to the basement as 3 armed officers swarmed the stairs. I walked down right behind them, flipping on the overhead fluorescent lights. Mark froze, the steel box slipping from his grip and hitting the concrete floor with a heavy metallic clatter. The color drained from his face until he looked like a ghost. "Danielle?" he stammered, his eyes darting frantically between the tactical gear of the police officers and my cold, unblinking glare. What are you doing here? I can explain." "Save it, Mark," I said, my voice steady and icy. "Detective Vance has watched every single second of your little demolition project on camera. So has Evelyn." He opened his mouth to speak, but the handcuffs clicked loudly over his wrists before he could utter another lie. As they hauled him away, he looked back at me, not as the husband who had tried to outsmart his deployed wife, but as a convicted fraudster who had walked straight into a trap. The fallout was swift and absolute. With the mountain of video evidence, financial records, and the recovered lockbox containing over $2 million in bearer bonds and gold, Mark's defense evaporated. He was convicted of grand larceny, attempted fraud, and conspiracy, receiving a sentence that ensured he'd be spending years behind bars rather than living in luxury. Through a clean, expedited legal process, our marriage was dissolved, and I helped ensure every single cent of the hidden fortune was safely restored to Evelyn. Out of deep gratitude for saving her late husband's legacy, Evelyn insisted on transferring the deed of the house entirely into my name, completely paid off. 3 months later, I sat on the front porch with a warm cup of coffee, listening to the peaceful rustle of the oak trees in the yard. The house that had once been turned into a battlefield of deceit was finally just home. A sanctuary earned through resilience, strategy, and truth. I had served my country overseas, but fighting for my own life right here on the home front was the hardest mission I'd ever faced. I'm curious to know, what would you have done if you found out your spouse was keeping such a massive secret while you were away? Comment below and let me know the city you're watching from. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out the 2 channel favorite videos appearing on your screen right now for more incredible real-life stories. Thank you for watching.